Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. Looks like we have to figure out what Howie Roseman is going to do with Haason Reddick. Is he worth trading and then utilizing what money would have been his to the secondary, to your linebacker play, fill out that defense that we claimed had a billion holes? Is that the best way to allocate your money? Or keep a phenomenal, a ridiculously good, fantastic, elite pass rusher who's from this area in an Eagles uniform? Honestly, I don't hate either option. It just comes down to execution. If you do trade him, and Pro Football Focus mentioned in a hypothetical trade that maybe it brings back a second-round pick from Houston in return, a 59th overall, which doesn't really get me excited. It's more along the lines of all of the money that Haason Reddick would be paid would be distributed through a couple of different pieces, which then can bolster up Vic Fangio's personnel, and we can at least see something that's so damn serviceable compared to what we saw in last year's defense, which was vomit, which was disgusting, gross, just piss poor, god-awful defense every single week. An abomination, all right, fireable offense for putting that roster together on that side of the ball, putting so much stock in Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean has not shown that he could play a lick at this level yet. Putting a bunch of stock in Avonte Maddox to stay healthy. That dude hasn't stayed healthy ever. In what universe are you going to snap your fingers and now all of a sudden Avonte Maddox will play 17 games and be ridiculous? It's just not real. And then, of course, when you put so much money into 30-plus-year-old cornerbacks, what are the odds that they both play at the top-tier level for a long period of time? It was so flawed from a fundamental standpoint. What do you do with your salary cap if you're Howie with this big decision? And it's not easy, but I do like both options. I don't have a problem with allowing someone who's so good at their craft, especially in an area that you know as an organization they value deep down. It's their core. It's their blood. If you cut open the Philadelphia Eagles to look through their DNA and how their bloodstream flows, it screams get to the quarterback. It screams edge rushers. It screams guys that are willing to go after the quarterback and get that motherfucker down to the turf. That's what it's all about. So if you have one of the premier guys in that respected area, then yeah, you keep him. You keep if you're not willing to pay this level of talent, then what are you willing to spend money on? That's a very fair question. So let's get to the ins and outs of exactly what we learned and the timeline. Because on Super Bowl Sunday, everybody reacted very intensely when the news dropped that Haason Reddick was granted permission to seek a trade. We've seen this happen a couple of different times with the Eagles, Darius Slay, Fletcher Cox, and both of them have put back on this uniform. The only difference is with the others, it was more along the lines, from my personal view, of, okay, you think you're worth that? You're not. Oh, trust me, you are not. So go ahead, peek around, see what interest is out there, come back to us, and then we'd be willing to sort of have a dialogue and see where both of us fall. And then they probably both realize, oh, the market isn't really coming after me. Oh, I thought I'd be getting way more than I am. All right, let's call back Howie Roseman. I don't think that would be the case here with Haason Reddick. Haason Reddick will, for sure, bring a bunch of attention. Now, I ripped apart 30-plus-year-olds at the corner position, but a premier position, like defensive end, and what Haason Reddick brings at his age, 29 or so, there is plenty left in the tank, and you should not be afraid at all to pour a bunch of money in your salary cap into that specific player, because you win when you have that man going bonkers. And that man goes bonkers when Matt Patricia's not his fucking defensive coordinator. I lose sleep thinking about this every day. You ready for this? Derek Barnett went to Houston. The second he left Philadelphia, and this new little look that you got from Sean Desai and Matt Patricia, that man looks like a damn juggernaut. That guy on national television, when it was a playoff game, that thing was all over Derek Barnett and the acquisition to Houston. Oh, look at what they got. Oh, my God. Derek Barnett, what a lifesaver. This dude jolted energy to the entire defense. This guy has been a magnificent addition to the Houston Texans organization. Derek Barnett? Okay, I'd have to imagine that the reason why Haason Reddick had a fall off and had a dip was more because the guy who was in charge here was not able to do anything. He was that abysmal at his job. He was incompetent. He didn't know how to utilize Reddick properly. And by the way, it's not very hard. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Let that man go. Let that man go. Take off the drop back in coverage crap and let him attack. Let him get after it. The dude thrives when you do that. So I'd have to imagine that the correlation between having one of the worst defensive coordinators to ever exist that has no idea how to call football games is the reason why he had a slower second half pace. I'm just telling you, Haason Reddick is incredible. He is so good. He's up there in the top of the league with Bosa, with anybody, with anyone. Name the best pass rushers, and that's him. Look at his production over the last few years. Elite. So you want to keep him in here? Well, if you allow him to seek other opportunities just to get an engagement with the market, he probably will have some more buzz and some more pop than where Darius Slay was in his career when he had that opportunity to do so. It really comes down to, though, the message. Because I see a lot of is this going to fracture the relationship talk? And it doesn't seem that way. Reddick spoke recently and said some of the reports were bogus, although I don't know if he was necessarily even, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't about the reports, but it was about maybe some of the fan base's reaction to the report that he was granted permission to seek a trade and all. By no means was it ever reported that he was demanding a trade. That was never reported once. So if he feels like it was, or if he feels like that was the message, then maybe he read it wrong, or like I said, others, outsiders, see the original report and then jump to conclusions that this means he was unhappy. This was inevitable. If you date back to training camp and Haason Reddick's deal, the moment you saw what that man was earning, it was obvious based off his production that he was worth way more, an obnoxious amount more. So he has spoken very publicly about this in the past, but he put his best foot forward. He wanted to be there for his teammates. He wanted to ball out. So he just did his thing until this season, where it was time with him and his camp to push a certain button to make sure that he gets a lot of cash. And okay, I kind of respect that he took the route he took under that recent contract, but now if he feels obligated, then so be it. I have no problem with it. But yeah, I don't get the whole, well, I never demanded a trade. I love Philadelphia. Yeah, nobody said you demanded a trade. Nobody at all. It said the Eagles were allowing you to talk to others, but if you paid attention to how this organization normally operates at this time, this falls into their normalcy and their path. But it really does come down to messaging and the conversation between Howie Roseman and Haason Reddick. Was it along the lines of, we love you, dude. We love you. We want you here. You're excellent. You're phenomenal. You're very important to our locker room. And, especially coming off of what happened last season, we really do value everything. We love you and we want you here. We just have to do this the right way. We just have to do this according to how we normally do things here and just work with us a little bit. So why don't you just get some time to talk to others, see what sort of is out there. But, if you get an offer for a deal, if you were to be traded to another team or a sign and trade, whatever, we're willing to work with these numbers here. We want you here. And if it was a very intense but heartfelt combat, we want you here, then this doesn't hurt. If it was yeah, dude, I got you, but it ain't happening, go ahead. Go ahead, go see. Go test the market. Go ahead, then come back to us. If it was similar to that route, I'm flipping both of you the double bird if I'm Haason Reddick walking out of that meeting with Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. I don't expect it to be the latter. It probably was the first because I wouldn't be shocked if he does return. But it really just comes down to how they see themselves fixing this whole entire problem. Is it more just from within? Because you have to have Nolan Smith then be a stud. And Nolan Smith looks very far away from being a stud. And Josh Sweat is also going to have to get some money. So do you think it's worth it to let Haason Reddick go, use that money in other areas, and then sign Josh Sweat when it's the time, and then hope and pray that Nolan Smith succeeds? Or do you maybe think about the time where Josh Sweat can go and you pay a lot of money towards Haason Reddick? There's multiple different areas. Of course, then drafting a defensive end will probably be in play. I saw Adam Schefter recently bring up the fact that this team is retooling, and the way that they're going to really hope to shine is to ask these younger players and to have some of these drafted kids really step up. And if that's the case, then Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis have to be significantly better. Jordan Davis, the whole in shape thing, I saw him chase down Josh Allen, and I think that play was sensational, and I'll never forget it. I'm not rolling out Jordan Davis as much as everybody else is. And Jalen Carter, once he learns how to keep it for 17 games and to be able to compete at a high level for a longer period of time against these big-ass grown men, it ain't Georgia anymore. This ain't the SEC anymore, dude. And yeah, I'm taking shots at the SEC because as great as it is for college football, it ain't the National Football League. It ain't Eagles Cowboys. You're not going up against that Cowboys offensive line for as many snaps as you did when you were playing with Georgia. It's just not the case. This is meaner, dude. This is significantly way more grossly intense and toxic on your body. These kids have to shine. And if that is the case, that they're retooling and asking some young kids to really step in and be a difference maker, then maybe that is sort of letting it marinate that maybe some of these veterans, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Haason Reddick, aren't as involved and in the big picture as much as we would like. I'm all speculating, right? I'm just kind of talking through multiple different examples here or scenarios that could possibly happen because it's all unknown. What does my gut tell me right now? My gut tells me a coin flip. So 50% of me does believe he can return, which might be a higher percentage than some of you out there. It very well could happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if they really do love him and want to see what is potentially offered so they can maybe match it, because they really do value that position. It's not linebacker. It's not safety. It's not a position where they kind of laugh it off and pretend like they're not going to put a lot of stock into it. This is their bread and butter. This is their meat and potatoes. And, I feel like there is a way to somehow make this work where if he wants to be in his hometown and he still values that Eagles logo, but he wants his money too. Can Howie Roseman get creative the way that he does and structuring up a contract so he can still find a way to make sure he's good and his family's all right, and at the same time maybe we can work with the salary cap the way that we need to so a hit isn't as massive. You know how Howie does his thing. It's very interesting though, and if they let him go, I'm not happy because you definitely are losing tremendous skill in an area that the team lacked. They couldn't get home as it is with him. Now, they weren't utilizing him, right? So that's also in play here. But if they were able to trade him, get a second-round pick, it's less about the pick, but what if they use that money that they would have paid him to get 3 pieces on your defense? And it depends on what caliber guys, right? Because here's the debate. If you got 3 serviceable pieces, serviceable guys that are fine, they're not game changers, they're not elite, they're not absolutely incredible at their respected position, but they're good. They're solid, right? You could play NFL defense and not look like you should be playing Pop Warner, which is what we saw last season. Is that better than having a few holes on defense, but a premier pass rusher? So you have below average secondary pieces, below average linebacker Haason Reddick, or no Haason Reddick, but you have 3 solid names. And I'm just speculating. What if it's 2 solid names? And at that point, it would be more solid because you're spending more money on 2 guys instead of less money per and having 3 guys. But what do you value more as a fan? And I don't think any of those 2 options are bad options. It's just about executing. I could live with both. And I heard Sheil Kapati on the morning show today with Joe DeCamera and John Ritchie sort of bring up, okay, if not the goal. Obviously, the goal is to be a top 5 defense and to do what Spags is doing and to take over games and whatnot. But is it possible that you can have the 15th ranked defense? So you are pretty much mediocre. You're in the middle. If your offense is in the top half, if your offense is a top 5 offense, do you have what it takes to really compete and be a competitor for a Super Bowl? And it's not impossible. It's not impossible. We'd probably not be satisfied, though, if I'm being completely honest. There's no way that this fan base with Vic Fangio and a 15th overall defense would be enamored. We'd probably say you need more. You got to upgrade certain positions. Guys weren't doing their jobs. You got to get more pressure. You got to get to the quarterback more. It'll eventually be their kryptonite, even if their offense is free-flying and all that stuff. So I get it from a roster building perspective. Yeah, you probably could get away with it in today's era to be a bombs-away team. And if the bar was what it was last year, then yeah, I'm sure it tickles fancies more because last year you were the worst thing ever. You were like literally the worst thing ever. Now we're discussing more of a serviceable D. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of speaking out loud with you all and trying to get a pulse on where everybody stands and what the options are for this team. What would I do if I was Howie? I'd have to be willing to trade him and look at free agents and look at some trades and just at least when I'm in my office, this is what I'm saying. When I'm in my office and I look up the free agents that are available, and I see some guys that are maybe on their last year of a deal, and you can make a trade, bring them in. We saw that with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. We've seen that in the past where another team isn't, we're dealing with it right now with Haason Reddick, another team isn't willing to pay them long-term. They don't want to get any sort of contract extension, so we have to move them, gain an asset, and then we'll let the other team kind of deal with whatever is down the road for this specific player and his compensation. Maybe that's a route you go. You can use that second pick to maybe go get somebody and then pay them at a different position. But that's the position they value the most. So why would they do that? Fair. Like I said, I'm sort of just talking out loud to you all now and seeing if we can find answers here. But I'd at least have to do my homework is basically what I'm getting at here. If we don't sign Reddick, what are we doing? Well, if we look at free agency and we can get a safety, if we can get a linebacker, if we can get a slot corner, whatever. I don't want to go into the year, and I know they're going to, with Ringo and with Isaiah Rodgers and that's sort of what they're going to do. And I think Rodgers actually might be able to play a little bit. I don't think that he's a disaster by any means, even though he had to deal with the whole gambling thing and then sit out a whole year. And then now, but I don't want them to pretend like he's the best corner to ever exist. And that'll absolutely be the way that they'll try and sell us what he provides so they don't have to use assets to go get a cornerback. They can't draft it. Why would I draft a corner? I have Isaiah Rodgers. Well, maybe because your corners are a billion years old and breaking down right in front of our eyes. I'm just spitballing here. My question, though, and my answer to my question about what would I do, trade him or keep him, I got to do my homework and see if what I think my vision can be outweighs Haason Reddick staying. If it doesn't, then by all means, I'm signing him. And maybe that's a cop-out answer because I'm sort of leveraging both here. But that's what you have to do, right? You gotta leverage both sides and see, okay, if we hit our peak with this, wow, is that better than if we hit our peak with this? Wow. That's what it's all about. It's the job. That's what Howie Roseman gets paid to do. You know what I get paid to do? Talk sports. And you know who is fantastic? HelloFresh. That's right. What if HelloFresh gives you free breakfast for life? What's that? They do? You'd be a fool today to not sign up at HelloFresh with code BROADSFREE for free breakfast for life. If you're unaware, what HelloFresh does is they drop off, first off, there's a menu online, over 40 plus recipes to choose from, and what you select gets dropped off right at your doorstep. You don't have to go grocery shopping at all, so eliminate that from your life. And there are step-by-step pictured recipe cards, about maybe 7 steps long, and everything comes pre-portioned, so you can't mess it up. Well, you got to put X, Y, and Z in here and measure it out. What if you put too much in? What if you don't put enough in? That's not the case, because the bags come, and it's like, hey, you pour this entire bag that's already measured out for you into the pan, bang, step 1, done. You can't screw it up, and you're getting so much different dinners than you're accustomed to. We all get stuck with the same meals every single week after a couple months. What am I doing? I'm eating this again. I'm getting tired of it. It's sick. It's boring. It's bland. There's no such thing as boring and bland on HelloFresh. And like I said, they're giving you free breakfast for life on top of the dinners that I just mentioned. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to HelloFresh.com/BroadsFree and use code BroadsFree for free breakfast for life. 1 breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/BroadsFree with code BroadsFree. That's why America's #1 meal kit is HelloFresh. Make sure you check the link down below in the description. HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. Okay, let's hear from the Anytime Hotline. We'll start things off with Sean. Let's do it.
I'm going to hedge my bet on your Haason Reddick question here. I want Haason Reddick back. I think from what I've heard, the going rate for somebody in his position and his age would be a 3rd or a 4th rounder, which really doesn't move the needle for me. But I don't want Haason Reddick back at $30 million. So to me, what I think is going to happen, I think the Eagles let him test the market. I think his expectations of what he might garner fall short. And I think Howie cuts him a new deal, an incentive-laden contract, maybe only a 1 or a 2-year deal, but it keeps him in Philadelphia. I don't think they can get a first-rounder for him. I don't think they can make a player-for-player swap for him. So to me, for his productivity, even under Fangio, who may have different ideas, I think it would be best to keep him.
Okay, interesting. I will disagree in regards of he might not get what he thinks he can get. I think he will. And another part of it is, too, I don't feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like he's hitting this not market, but seeking a trade and expecting to be the highest paid defensive edge in the league. I don't think his expectation is to make the biggest splash and the most obnoxious noise and get the fattest paycheck in the entire world and sitting out until he gets what he thinks he deserves. I just think he wants more. I think he feels that he's not getting paid what he provides, and I would agree with that, right? He is definitely significantly underpaid for his value. I just think he's trying to get his value. I don't think he's trying to overdo it. And if it comes down to that, of course, if we're sitting in a position like Tobias Harris where we can get a max deal when we're worth 60, 70% of that, well, then, of course, no doubt about it, you take it. But I don't think he's that type of dude where he's fully going into this mode of devil and I'm getting what I demand now and I'm getting that high-paid contract. I think he just wants to get what he thinks he's deserving of in today's market, which is fair. But, just in regards to like a hostile environment and a super brutal back and forth, and it's going to create all sorts of havoc and dysfunction in the organization because of how these two are not cooperating. I don't know if it's to that level. So if he's just looking for market value and feels the Eagles aren't giving him market value, then yeah, of course he's going to take this route. But then it goes back to, well, if the other teams are just offering what the market is, then I feel the Eagles can match that. The only way the Eagles won't match it if a team overpays. And would a team be willing to overpay for a premier talent like that? Yeah. How many times have we said, yeah, when a player hits, I know this is different than free agency, but when a player does hit free agency, you are pretty much sacrificing a few years on the back, or maybe you're willing to pay an extra $1, $2, $3 million AAV because, well, what you're bringing in your door. And sometimes you do that. So if a team is willing to do that, overpay just a tad and make the Eagles feel uncomfortable, then maybe the hand is played for you and then there's not much else Howie can do. But yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. I guess, Sean, the only place I disagree in is I think he does get what he thinks he can get. I do feel that way. All right, let's go to Zach in Baltimore.
So I'm calling in to talk about this Haason Reddick situation, and I'm taking the side of you got to pay the man.
Okay.
All right? I know people are saying Nolan Smith can come in and be this and be that. We don't know that yet. He's not proven. Haason Reddick has had double-digit sacks in the last 3 seasons. He's the most talented, best player on your defense. You have to keep him around. I know it's going to be hard to pay Landon Dickerson and Devontae Smith. You've got to keep Haason Reddick, man. If this guy goes, your defense takes another hit, and your defense is going to be even worse. We don't know what Nolan Smith is. Maybe he's a superstar. We don't know that yet. And, I mean, that was a bad draft pick, let's be honest. But Haason Reddick has to stay, all right? He just has to stay. You need to sign the man. Knowing Howie Roseman, he's not going to offer him a big, pricey contract. So it's basically going to be agree to what we offer you or we're going to trade you. And I just can't do that, man. You got to keep him in Philly. You got to. All right, boss. Peace out. See you later.
All right, Zach, I appreciate your call. A few things there. I don't know if Nolan Smith stinks yet. I mean, I don't think he's going to be hold on. I know he's not going to be anywhere near Haason Reddick, but the full career, we all wrote Brandon Graham off, and then things change. Yes, his size, and people were confused about the size and how it would relate to the NFL style, this and that. I'm not willing to say he can't play. I'm willing to say if you're leaning on that as part of your juice rushing the passer next season, it will be a significant drop-off from Haason Reddick. Once again, where I'll disagree with you with the Haason Reddick part of it is, you said your defense takes a step back if he's not here. Yeah, if you don't replace that spot and that money that you remove off your, but you're going to then do something else. Meaning, if Haason Reddick is gone and in your eyes your defense takes a significant step back, you're right. But what you're not factoring in is what do you do with the money that you're no longer applying to Haason Reddick? You're going to build your team in other areas. Well, if you pick up a couple of different pieces for your defense that can solidify a big problem in whatever position it is, well, then you're also improving that position. So you have to sort of weigh what you lose and then weigh what you gain and see where it all lines up in your eyes. You can't just remove Reddick and then pretend like nothing else happens. You then add to your roster in other ways. Did your roster get better? Maybe not as impactful with one name, but there's so many holes that you have to fill in a lot of holes. And how can you do that? And it's a hard sell. It is, because I like superstars. Superstars win. You win because of superstar talent. So letting one of those walk out the door stinks. It stinks. It really does. It would hurt tremendously. Comes down to player evaluation, which I'm sure will get everybody excited, because Howie Roseman and player evaluation is what everybody gets excited for, right? We'll take one more here.
Hey, Birds. I don't know about you, but I'm all for trading Haason Reddick. I mean, it's nothing against Haason, but I feel like, one of the main priorities this offseason, in my opinion, has to be to get younger. And it's pretty clear that Haason has started to age over the years.
I don't know about that.
And, I feel like a 30-year-old Haason Reddick won't be getting us as much as the assets that we could receive if we traded him would be. And plus, we also already have Nolan Smith, who has shown some promise, who we hope to get better next season. But, yeah, go Eagles.
All right, thank you for the call. That was almost the other extreme of the Nolan Smith stuff. I didn't see much promise. I'm not ruling him out. Like Zach maybe said he looks like a bust, but I'm also not saying I saw promise. I didn't really see promise. It's more blind hope and faith more than anything else. I'm just not ruling out a man's career after one season when it was very difficult to get in, and you also have incompetent people leading the charge from a coaching level, so maybe that also held him back. You need help, especially when you're that young in this league and you had zero help. You didn't have a 1% help, 2% help. You had zero help. So I have to factor that in, that maybe if somebody like Vic Fangio, been around football for a while, can get his staff in there, get some help with the D-line, maybe it can help improve a little bit. All right, so there's that. But nah, Haason didn't fall off. That was so systematically flawed on everything. Derek Barnett went out and thrived. If Derek Barnett can leave here and thrive, there's something wrong here. I'm sorry, I just can't shake that. I can't shake that angle at all. It's stuck into my head for the rest of time. All right, everybody, I love you guys to death. I truly do appreciate all your support. I love you. Happy Valentine's Day. Right? Oh, happy Valentine's Day. I appreciate you guys so much, and we'll be talking very soon.